What's going on, everyone? Andres Gamboa here, and this is the Ponytails Podcast. If this is your first time, let me tell you a little bit about what we do. If you didn't sell books, let me definitely tell you about what we do. We interview people who sold books door to door with Southwestern Advantage for 80 hours a week on straight commission in a different part of the country during their summers in college. This company has been doing this, recruiting college kids to go do this job, this internship for 160 something years. And naturally speaking, there's hundreds of thousands of people who have done this, and they're all out in the wild doing some fun and really cool things. So we go find them, ask them what they're doing, how this entire experience changed their career, and how it's affecting them even still today, and just learn a little bit more about a variety of industries. So stick around. Hopefully you guys enjoy. My guest today is Eliav Cohen. He went to Cornell University and is originally from Seattle, Washington. He sold 9 summers with Southwestern Advantage from 2001 to 2010. Some would say those could have been the golden years of the company itself. His favorite scroll from Ogmandino, which is the motivational book we use to learn a little bit more about ourselves and sales, is number 4, which is I Am Nature's Greatest Miracle, if I'm not mistaken. But if you guys want to get a hold of him, there's going to be a link below for his LinkedIn, so you guys can make sure you find him and contact him if anything that we're talking about today is of interest to you. So when I come back, we will be with Eliav. Welcome back, sir. Hey,
what's going on, Andres?
Dude, it's just funny because little did I know that this podcast was going to lead me to meet such cool people, including yourself. So I'm glad that you're back. I'm excited. When I saw that you had booked again, I was like, let's go. Eliav's a man.
Well, the most exciting was the last time we hung out was with Andrew Yang. So
yeah,
that was kind of epic.
That wasn't a terrible night. That was so fun. We stayed up till like 2 a.m. with a former presidential candidate, just like having beers and talking about politics. It was really fun. That was a good time. We had talked about getting him on the show. I gotta go back and reach out to some of his people and see if we could do that.
We'll chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cause we do make exceptions for non-book people every once in a while. If they're like, like that. Like if Mark Cuban wanted to be on our show, I'm not gonna be like, oh no, sorry, book people only. Like, no, yeah, just come on and share some of your entrepreneurial intelligence. We'll make an exception for people like that. But anyway, welcome back. It was a fun time hanging out here in Portland. Last time I saw you, I wanted to, I was exciting to me because we can just dive right in. I was excited to me to see you back on our names list for upcoming guests because times are so crazy right now with the way that AI is changing the world. And I know the last time we had talked, if you guys want to go back and listen to that episode, you totally can. It was like episode 9 or something, way back in the beginning of our show. So we can probably recap some of that stuff. But you had been working with an AI software. You've been building it on your own for businesses. And so before I spill the beans on this, I'll just open it up to you to kind of explain a little bit about what you're doing there, how that's working, and what can we do to understand a little bit better of all this AI stuff that we've been hearing, in the news, on Twitter, and everywhere in the world right now.
Sure. Yeah. So there's really two core things. The main thing that we're building is called Helium, which of course, I named because I'm a hot air balloon pilot as well, because, Henry.
We'll get to that because that's pretty sweet.
We'll get into that. But basically I named it Helium based on, some ballooning, homage. But anyway, what it allows you to do is, let's say there's an article about you or about your company in like Forbes or Newsweek, or you buy some piece of sponsored content in Dwell magazine or whatever it is for your company. What it allows you to do is use your company's chatbot, right, that connects your people to live chat with prospects or to book meetings, to allow them to chat on that third-party website. So imagine, like, Andres, like Forbes does an article about ponytails, right? And then all of a sudden, while someone's reading on Forbes, they don't have to leave Forbes to go to your website to then fill out a form or chat or whatever. While they're on that Forbes article, they can literally have a conversation with you, and you can answer questions and book direct demos or meetings with them. So the idea is there's all this intent data, right? Where it's like you go to different sites and they go, hey, this person had intent to buy your product, maybe, right?
Sure.
Well, instead of waiting for all that or hoping they make it to your site and then fill out a form or get in touch, at this point, wherever they're reading an article, or even if it's e-com, they're buying a product, you can get that 1 or 2 questions answered at that moment. So the whole hypothesis about this thing is people only have 1 or 2 questions if they're looking to buy something, right? So if you're looking for e-com, it's like, hey, does it do this? Like, does it connect to my phone? Does it, like, whatever your question is, like, how big is it, right? If you can get that question answered, you're going to buy it. If it's a piece of software, you're like, well, does it integrate with this? Is it easy, right? There's like 1 or 2 questions and then you'll book a demo. So that's what this solves.
That's very cool. So the win-win here would be that if, like, for example, you are Forbes, they would be paying you to help people stay on their website, because that's one thing that they don't want is for traffic to leave where they're, they want to keep people consuming their product, whether that be a magazine or whatever. So for them, it's a win, because then the user stays on their website, gets their questions answered from something they saw that was interesting to them. And then once that question is answered, the other party is interested because they can have a potential customer demo scheduled
so
right then and
it's a
there.
win-win. The publisher basically is what you call people who are building articles or have content, and then they either do affiliate marketing, right? Which I'm assuming most people know what affiliate marketing is now, but basically allows that if they click through from your article to Amazon and they buy something, you make money, right? Mm-hmm. And all these sites have affiliate partnerships, or sometimes they're selling even directly through it, right? Or they're getting paid for that demo if they just like get them to your site or something. There's all kinds of different ways that people make money doing it. But the publisher is like, hey, the only way they make money is through selling advertising. So they sell like big banner ads, or a piece of sponsored content where you write it with them, but it's about your company, right? And then they promote it to get people to your site or to download a white paper, whatever it is, right? So they get to keep them on the page, but as a business, you now get to use their authority, right? So let's say you're like an article about you in the New York Times. Well, the New York Times has much more authority than you do on your site. So the fact that they can chat with you on the New York Times gives automatic authority, and they don't have to leave that article to go to your site that's about something likely different. So imagine if you go back to book days, right? Imagine you knock on someone's door and you're like, hey, I'm here to show educational books. And you get inside and you're like, oh, by the way, I also sell Cutco knives. That's kind of how like most sites work, right? There's like a super contextual article, right, about one specific thing, and you go to the website and it's like totally generalized. Or even if it's a specific page, it's still not as contextual as the article of who it was written for. So that's why intent is, I would say, the 2 most important things in general with all marketing. And this is where all CMOs are going towards right now. And we build a lot of chatbots for very large companies and public companies and large mid-market organizations. And what they're all focused on is 2 things. How do you get high intent people to book a meeting now? How do you get someone who's on the site to be able to chat with you? And it all comes down to personalization and context. If you can get the personalization and context down, you win. The piece that most people miss is the accessibility point, which is like knocking on a door. So imagine like never knocking on a door and then hoping you're selling stuff. That's kind of how most sites are doing it, right? And so that's where the opportunity is. Hey, can you, anywhere you're talked about, can people get in touch with you and book a meeting or ask a question?
That's brilliant. Okay, I have so many questions. Okay, number 1, first of all, how did you get into AI? So you went from Southwestern in 2010 to where 12 years since you last sold books, 13 almost now since you last sold books. What was like your foot in the door with this whole entire AI
it's
industry?
super odd. So left Southwestern and I went to a startup, went to another startup, ZocDoc, that was a big $1 billion company that was, like 4 cities selling online scheduling to doctors, and then left that. And I was like, screwed, I just want to fly hot air balloons. So I had gotten to hot air ballooning because of Henry, the CEO of Southwestern. I won a sales contest. I was like top 10, whatever. So I was number 7. So I got to go ballooning with him. And I was like, this is epic and awesome. I need to buy a hot air balloon, right? And it was one of the things that Henry told me is he said, Eliav, I go, why do you have a hot air balloon? And he goes, I acquire companies with it. And I was like, what? What do you mean you acquire? How do you acquire a company with a hot air balloon? And he goes, well, if people trust you with their life, they'll trust you with their money and their business. I was like, you're
Ooh.
smart. He goes, you know, Richard Branson did that too. That's how he signed Janet Jackson. And he goes, that's how Malcolm Forbes built relationships. Another billionaire started Forbes, right? So, or he was involved with Forbes. So I was like, all right, I guess that's the easiest and fastest way to build a relationship. I'll buy a hot air balloon. So I was using that for a while just to get meetings, right, with CEOs, because who's not going to, if you invite someone to go ballooning with you, they'll probably set a meeting, right? At least, like,
Most
at least
likely.
meet.
At the very least, in the balloon.
Yeah, I mean, they may not come ballooning. I'd say of the 150 people I asked in ballooning, there were probably about 8 that ended up coming, but almost every single one of them I booked a meeting with and came in and met, and they were just fascinated about ballooning, right? The ones that did come ballooning actually became some of my best friends to today, which is amazing, whether we work together or not. And so it really is like the fastest way. So anyway, eventually I was like, screw it, I'll just start a hot air balloon company, you know, and I was like, that sounds easy, which it was. So small businesses are really simple. If you've already been part of SaaS companies, you know, and learned how to scale them, it's really simple because people run small businesses, suck at technology, and don't understand SEO and a lot of those things are reviews and customer service, all those things that go in. They just like excited about whatever they're doing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, as I started to build the balloon company, I was using live chat in 2016, which is called Chatra. It was like the first live chat, right? That everyone was using. Mm. And people asked the same questions, like, how high do you go? How many people fit in a balloon? Is there a weight limit? Can my dog come? Can I have sex in the balloon? You know, like normal questions people ask.
Of course. Or the ones people are wondering
the
for sure.
No, by the way. You cannot have sex. It'd be really awkward for the pilot. So
yeah.
I don't know how much to pay. Maybe there's not. Maybe there's a market for that. So,
are you for sale, Eliav?
So anyway, out of that, I was like, there's got to be a way to automate answering these questions, right? Because I was just answering them. I'm like in bed, like texting with people. Like, what a terrible thing to be like a salesperson and getting like people wanting to ask questions at like 11 o'clock at night, and you know you can close them, but you're in bed, and it like really screws with your relationship, right?
Yeah, so, it's like the end of the day.
Yeah. So I was like, great, I'll find a way to automate it. And that's when I found Drift. So Drift was the top like B2B platform. They had like 300 customers at the time. And they were like, really, this hot air balloon company wants to use us? And now they have like 400,000 customers, right? So I became the super user very quickly on Drift, where then they're like, can you help other businesses build this stuff? And I was like, I don't want to. I don't want to get back into B2B. I just want to literally fly hot air balloons. And they paid me lots of money. So we started building for other companies. And then out of that, we were working with all these organizations, and we kept finding that there was issues around, like, if you're a manufacturer, right? And I'm a prospect on, let's say, Ford's site. Well, how do you get it to the local person? Because all these Ford companies have different chatbots from different companies. So like, well, how can we allow their chatbot to work there? And that's where the whole AI piece came in, was, hey, how do you automate chatbots to make sure that they're contextual for the individual page they're on, and building that out further, which we've been building since like 2017 in AI chatbots. And then it was, great, how do we take that to the next level to figure out what pages he's going with the context for it all to work together? And now it's just making sure people have good enough AI chatbots. They can answer every question. And that's kind of where we got to today, where I ended up, Brian Toleby, who I'm sure you know. Have you had Brian on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had
Brian, he'd always hung out with Richard Branson with some like different stuff. And I was like, God damn it, Brian, I want to go meet Branson, go talk about hot air ballooning. And he had an AI thing, and I had the opportunity to go with like the top 20 AI people in the world. And that's where then I got very deep into my understanding of what's happening. And then we use AI for everything we do, from writing content to responding to reviews. Like, I use ChatGPT 4 to 5 hours a day. I write all my emails with it too now. So I've like totally taken AI into everything I do. It's pretty fun.
I wrote an email today using ChatGPT for the first time. I was like, this is better than I could have done it.
What did you use? So my favorite is like when you're super emotional and you write something, you're like, oh, and then all you do is put in, make this nice, but still direct. And from a partnership standpoint, then it makes it really nice, and you just send it.
And then I put, make it witty, and then it's just really good. It's just so good.
I mostly just have to say, make this nice. Like, because I'm like, I don't build the fluff, but if you put in the context and you're like, hey, it's Valentine's Day in 5 days, and you give it additional context, it'll put all of that info into it. And I always write who it's for and who I am, and I take their LinkedIn profile and or some reviews on them, so you can so it understands the context of who they are. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, you can, and AI is the kind of thing where this is actually something I discovered, and I think I might have made a breakthrough for my personal developments from a standpoint of our business. But if you know how to ask the right questions to ChatGPT, it's insane what you can get out of it. So I was kind of getting stuck. I'm like, how do I get it to tell me what I need to know? And so then I asked it, because I had asked a bunch of questions and all the context of the conversation it takes into consideration. And finally I was like, hey, what am I not asking you that I should be asking you? I asked ChatGPT that. And so it's like, you should have probably asked me. And they gave me like 6 questions. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. And so I asked it all of those questions. And then, oh, eureka. It was fucking awesome. It's
insane. I ask a lot about that to help me create a prompt specifically. So I'll say, hey, can you create a prompt that is this, this, this? But at this point, my prompts that I build out are typically about 500 words. So
they're long.
The way that I create a lot of blog articles and a lot of content. So like right now we're #1 for like hot air balloon history, which is hilarious. Right? Like we're beating out Balloon Fiesta and like everyone, or like, are hot air balloons safe? Like I think we've got hot air balloons in airspace. We're beating the FAA. Like it's pretty fun. So I've got like, we get like 25,000 people to the site a month for the ballooning site for Seattle ballooning. Yeah. And a lot of them are like, how do you steer a balloon, right? It's like general stuff, which helps out with SEO if you understand SEO. But when I write these articles, I'll put in such detailed pieces of your own knowledge as well. But then you'll say like, write it with idioms, so I've been learning the English language that I was never interested in, like technical English pieces, in order to write better content. So like use delicious adjectives, use idioms and similes, include dangling participles. So I'm using all that like random crap where we talk about, hey, you know what a dangling participle is, mom? So now I'm like, hey, put in some dangling participles. And then you can use the AI to do like certain like percentages, like only use the next possible word 20% of the time, then use a top 100 to 1,000 word 30% of the time, and then 1,000 to 5,000 the next word 30% of the time, and it creates a completely human content because it's using the information that AI is giving you in order to create your prompts. It's amazing.
It's so bananas. You know what you need to do? You need to start a podcast about hot air ballooning, and then you should record it on the hot air balloon.
Dude, so I used to have between 500 and 1,000 people live every Wednesday for hot air ballooning. And we would talk about hot air balloon safety. I brought on, world champion hot air balloonists, the guys that are like taking a balloon to space. I brought the CEO of them and their COO and like the top gas balloon builders in the world on, because no one was doing it, right? And so I did it during COVID for about 2 years. And it was really, I learned so much about, but like in general stuff. Like it was, I mean, people like who like went to Antarctica and took a balloon. These guys do like, all over the world. And it was fascinating, but ultimately, you have to look at, are you going to choose to monetize or not? And I was like, man, I have other stuff going on that's more interesting. Yeah. Like in most of it, I was paying money basically for the software for me to learn, which again, I completely changed my operation based on it, on some of those conversations, like massive, major changes to the ballooning operation based on them. I mean, it was incredible.
So cool. Well, if you ever need to get back into it, we have a service that helps produce them. So all you got to do is record it. But I'd be sweet to just do a video podcast where you just talk about anything or hot air ballooning itself, but while you're in the balloon.
So here's the secret we're trying to do right now. You ready? I've talked to a couple different producers, different folks about it. They do like comedians in cars. We're looking at doing hot air ballooning where I will land in a random celebrity's yard with a celebrity. And so imagine having like Zach Galifianakis or like, someone ridiculous in the basket with you, and then landing on someone's property. Because all these celebrities own like large plots of land and all over the place. So they were there, just gonna hop over a property. And then you'd be like, okay, you have 3 choices. A, you get your best bottle of champagne from your fridge and we drink it now. 2, you invite us in and make us breakfast. Or 3, you get in the balloon with us. Right. And it's like, You don't need red cameras, just some like really fun stuff. And I think it would be
Yeah.
fascinating and fun and hilarious, because that was what, for a while, I was just trying to like land on celebrities' yards. I still do it. And I just try to like meet Seahawks players by like landing in their field. And I'm like, oh, hey, John, like it's hilarious. But again, it all comes back to books, right? It's like, hey, you land in someone's field. I know their name from a plot map, right? It's just all online now. And I go, hey, Mark. It's hilarious.
Hey, Mark, it's Eliav. Dude, that is awesome. We'll chat more
So
about
that's
that
what we're
off the air,
trying to
because
do.
that's a great idea. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we could. That's a great idea. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I know I am. I wanted to give a quick shout out to the people that make this show possible, the people that bring this show to you. These are people who all sold books, and we're here to give a quick shout out to them in a spotlight about their company and what they're up to. So if you're interested, or if after listening to this you're kind of wanting to know a little bit more, feel free to click on the links below to connect with these people. These are from an excerpt I have with them from a podcast that I do on the side. It's called Executive Exercises, where we take all our sponsors and they come into a think tank and share some awesome ideas about how to grow their business specifically on different topics. Go check that out. But I pulled some of the comments that they had explaining what they do and who they're looking for on their companies. And so if that sounds like you, like I said, click below. Hope you enjoy. So yeah. And so money wise, and it just seemed like it was going to be the leads, which I wanted to go back to that because you mentioned this, and that's another thing that maybe Southwestern people don't understand is leads. That's kind of like you're saying, basically, imagine you show up to a town to sell books, you send a postcard out to every single family that has kids in school or young children, asking them if they struggle with any of the following subjects, yes or no. Would you be interested in hearing about a product that might help you with all those subjects, yes or no, name and address, and then you just waited at your HQ for like a couple of weeks, and then you got in the mail like 700 people returning that postcard saying, come to my house, here's where I live. Hi, are you the mom of the house? Yes, and we've heard of you. Great.
Yeah. Is this your handwriting,
let's-
Miss Betty? Yeah, that's my handwriting.
yeah.
You got a few minutes? It's, again, you're not selling every single lead that you sit down with, but the leads is kind of what interested me, because that kind of anxiety feeling that I talked about at Southwestern and the anxiety I had with Family Heritage, I honestly didn't think that was going to go away, but it has. It's gone away when I sold. I still had a little bit of anxiety, but after that first knock, it goes away. But much less anxiety every week, because I know I have fresh leads coming in. And so even if this day doesn't work out, I know I got, typically our agents will get anywhere from 25 to 50 leads a week of people that they can go and call on.
I want people to understand what it is that you do, how you do it, why you do it, all of the good stuff. You hear a lot about coaching. You hear a lot about life coach, sales coach, business coach, yada, yada, coach.
Man, I think just to start off, like what it isn't, it's not training. It's not showing up and having somebody talk at you for 45 minutes to an hour. And like the way that I look at it is we're all human beings. We're all broken in some capacity. And we all know a lot of the people that I work with, they know what they're supposed to be doing. They're just not executing on it, or they're not doing it as intentionally as they should be. Or they're just not focused. They have like 15 different goals or 15 different things that they're trying to balance or do. And because of that, like they're not as intentional as they should be at home, or they're not as intentional as they should be at work, and they're not picking up the phone and calling people. And it's like having a personal trainer for your business. It's having intention on why we do what we do every day, and creating clarity and helping to build our lives and our calendars around what our future goals and intentions are.
That'll do for now. Like I said, make sure you click below to get some more information. And now back to the show. I love that. Okay. Second question I had about what you said about AI stuff. So we chatted a little bit about ChatGPT there, but so as you are looking into this, because you're so involved in this industry, for you, what do you think in your mind is the North Star, or how do you see like the best use of this? Because you hear from different talking heads in this space about what's happening and where it's going, and you get the whole Terminator scenarios, and then you get the whole it's totally fine. But for you, as you see it, how do you see this changing the way maybe businesses run because of AI? Like what to you would be like the top
2
three
things.
things?
Number one, we're totally screwed in probably 6 years. The world will change based on something that happens with AI that completely changes how our world works for a negative. So that is
so we're all gonna die.
It could be very bad, but we're about 6 years out, and that's what OpenAI, has said as well. When I met the OpenAI guys, when Brian and I were with Branson, that's what everyone was talking about. They're like, look, we are 6 years out basically from having an AI that can ask itself a question and it's too connected. If everything's connected, you can say like, hey, I want to, make more money on my shipping boat, like whatever, the grain, right? And somehow because it's connected, it can understand like the ramifications of doing one small piece that will completely shift that ends up making you more money, right? And it's not on a purposeful thing that someone like kills stuff off or causes catastrophe, but that's what ultimately causes the connectedness of AI to all the different systems. And that's what needs to happen about transparency. So I think there's transparency of what things are connected and there's like stopping levels. So anyway, that's number one, but I should probably start building my bunker. Okay. So
we're all going to die. One. Okay. Got it.
Well, maybe not all going to die, but it's going to definitely, there's a very possibility of like major changes in humanity based on that. Okay. Aside from that, from businesses, I think that there's a couple different things. I was talking with the principal of my son's elementary school the other day, because basically they cut out ChatGPT or no one can use them at schools right now on school computers. Here's what I find fascinating. And this goes back to our book selling days too, right? If they block it from school computers, who doesn't have the opportunity in order to use AI? Kids who are underserved, underprivileged, and don't have another computer at home. So by actually blocking it, of not like engaging with it and having it be included in teaching kids how to use the prompts and teaching differently, which should shift our educational system in general, we're putting those kids at an even further disadvantage than 100%. They were. And realistically, with AI, the only things that you can do to teach a kid, and then we'll go to business stuff, but is you can teach them critical thinking, right?
Yeah.
And you can teach them how to use systems. So really, we should be teaching kids how to use the prompts. We should be teaching kids how to use why you need to understand what an idiom is, right? Or a dangling participle, because why you might want to use that, or what are descriptive words of how you describe an adjective and how that gives you different outputs, right? Or, hey, you wrote this in the first person, how automatically saying, hey, now make it to the second person. Or, and I find that most adults, right, who have tried ChatGPT or tried AI, basically they're too simplistic. They don't get how powerful. And so to give you an example, the other night, my friend Christy came over. She's her son and my son go to school together, and she's picking up her kid. And she's works in medical, where she basically tests cultures, that kind of stuff, right? Like works in a laboratory. And she goes, I go, yeah, come up with something. And she goes, how about like telling me about dolphins? I was like, that's ridiculous. Who gives a crap about dolphins? Like, how about dolphins that have lasers attached to their heads? Like, give me a juxtaposition that's interesting. So finally I go, let's talk about your work. She goes, I go, what is something that's really like that you think about on a daily basis your work talks to you about? And she goes, oh, it's about safety, of how we don't cause like the cells to be, killed off, right? Or like some foreign thing in them that causes a different result, right? And I said, okay, great. So I wrote, pretend you are a person in a lab that works on this. It was like a CPB or whatever the name was, right? I go, what are the things from a safety protocol would you want to make sure so you always get good results? And so it creates that. And I go, okay, now let's go into more detail. So we do it into more detail. And I go, okay, now's where the fun happens. I go, okay, now write a fiction story based on the information that you work in a lab, that a woman works in a lab who's 43 years old. I go, where is she from? She goes, Asia. I go, great. An Asian lady. I go, what does she like to eat? What did she do last weekend? And we start writing it. I go, who's trying to save her friend from the crime her friend committed by tainting some cells in the laboratory? Write the opening paragraph. So use the knowledge above and create this and I go, right in this, I have Michael Crichton, right? Write this epic paragraph, right? So then she goes, oh man, this seems like it's been great for like writing resumes. I go, oh, should we do her resume? Because she's definitely getting fired. So I go, well, based on like her helping her friend, she'll probably get caught and be fired. She needs to create her resume. By the way, she also worked at Chuck E. Cheese as a mascot. write her resume. She worked for 10 years at Pfizer in this laboratory. So it writes the whole damn fucking like resume out and includes under Chuck E. Cheese, like worked as a mascot, helped families and kids to enjoy their kids. It understood the context and wrote the resume. Then I go, great. Now should we create the conversation with the new interviewer and make it really awkward about her experience as Chuck E. Cheese as she tries to relate that to White House? And it literally built it out with these questions. I go, now make it so she like makes a sexual slant towards the interviewer to try and get the job. Like, I mean, mind blowing. Here's what this tells you. I go, how hard was that for us to come up with? She goes, that was challenging to think through it. You know how much creativity that takes? So what I'm telling you is AI only works powerfully when you use creativity and critical thinking and can juxtaposition to use your brain to come up with something way the hell more interesting than you ever would in the past and all that context. That's the power of it.
Yeah. And so based on what you're saying, so I love that. If you open that up, what that takes away is it starts rewarding creativity, critical thinking in the education space, which ultimately would be better for our population. It would make it so it's stronger.
Testing, right?
Yeah, right now it's whoever can cram the best and remember things better or has the best, that's the rat race, right? Study hard, cram for the final. They cram for the final. And then within 6 months, they totally forgot what they learned. And this is at all levels. This is from master's programs down to elementary school. That's how it's generally working. Even in private schools, people, oh, that's public school. No, everywhere. That's basically, there's some sort of standardized testing. And there's really intelligent children in intelligence by across the board, not just logical intelligence, but like people who are linguistically intelligent, people who are musically intelligent that are falling through the cracks because they're being tested upon some basic dumb way of testing someone. Whereas if you did it this way, where it's like, to me, the way I was having this conversation with Tad Ballinger, who's also working in AI. He's a professor at UNC, sold books. And what I was saying is, it's like saying, this must have been kind of like when calculators first came out in math classes, and people were like, no, you can't use calculators. You know what I'm saying? Because they had to like prove that they knew it longhand. But it's like, no, but we have this technology that can just basically not remove the necessity of having to do calculations. So now instead of putting our brain power into that, we can put our brain power into thinking how we can apply these mathematical things.
That's what's so cool. Think about calculators. If you understand the fundamental pieces of math, you use the calculator to do way more
to change the world? Things. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the same thing with AI.
Exactly. It's like when the calculator came out. Yeah. It's like when the calculator came out. It's like, they must have said the same thing. Oh, kids can't use this. It's cheating. It's like, no. What if instead of cheating, what if you looked at it as in like a tool that then encourages the kid to think critically and be like, wow, we can multiply, we can find square roots, and we can take things to an exponential, to an exponent in lightning speed. What can we achieve with this? We can go to the moon. That's what we did. We created calculators or computers that could make calculations incredibly fast. And then within 20 years, we were in the moon. Like, that's how, that's what, and we can do that with this.
Funny enough, you know that all space stuff all came from balloons, right?
The first, I think I heard this on Joe Rogan.
So this is wild. So this guy died of COVID who 2 years ago, who was like a balloon historian and collected like all this balloon history, all these government docs and all this kind of stuff. Speaking of like the balloon this week, of the China balloon, it was hilarious.
Oh yeah, that was
crazy. We'll get into that in a moment because this is funny shit. So anyhow, I got all this stuff. So I have like 20 boxes of like balloon history, like all the original photos. Like this guy collected from everyone, right? And a lot of military and covert balloon operations. So Colonel Kittinger in 1961 jumped from like that 100,000 feet, right? That's where the spacesuits come up. When the balloon, who went to the stratosphere first? Picard, right? Jean Picard, who ended up going up, to 67,000 feet in like 1939, right? Jeez. Everything was testing. The first satellite you could get an actual receiving from was a balloon. It was just called the Satelloon. It was like 140 feet piece across, like this giant silver balloon they put up in the sky, up into space. It was going 16,000 miles an hour, and you could bounce radio signals and TV signals off it. It was the first time. Everything was based around balloons. And that's why it's so interesting. And even still today, you're the China balloon, right? Here's what's hilarious. You ready? In 1951 to 1956, there's a secret program called Gopher. And Gopher was the US going, hey, let's build balloons and put cameras beneath them during the Cold War to take photos of Russia of all their military sites. Sounding a little familiar so far? You know what their cover was? Weather balloons. Sound familiar from this week?
Yeah.
And then what they did was they purposely took some balloons and sent them over Japan. Why did they purposely send them over to Japan as well as Russia? So the Russian couldn't say, oh, you are only doing this is a spy program. It was 5 years they did it, right? To get there so they could launch all these. And they said, no, look, there's another in Japan. That's like, oh, look, there's another one in South America. It's really not a spy balloon, really. And then the president, and so I'm like reading these docs, which is the Joint Chiefs of Staff, with the president talking about that the Russians now know. And this is 1956, right? And they go, well, luckily there's this article about the weather balloons, so we're just going to stay with that and push that again and say it has nothing to do with us. And I mean, so I really believe from this week, it was so dead on, almost as if they read it and just copied it. And here's the truth. China is just really behind. Right, because the U.S. did this in 1956, like 70 years behind, and Japanese did it during World War II and sent balloons out with bombs. So, like, really, China is just really, really slow to market, and that's why now they're doing spy balloons.
Eventually they'll have bigger stuff. That is so bananas, man. Wow.
But funny enough, you know what I wrote using ChatGPT? An entire article that's 2,500 words long that's now for space and balloons. You put in space and balloons, and it's showing up one of the top on Google because I wrote it with ChatGPT. But again, I had enough knowledge and real information to create good information. That's what gets the businesses, right? So if you think about it from a business point of view, you have to be technical and understanding who your user is and what you do. The more technical you can put into it, the better articles you create. And that's from a search engine optimization point, it's huge.
Yeah,
because you can get all the right keywords, but you also understand it. So someone who's an expert in their space, they can get it to rank top on Google just because they understand it. They're putting in the right information in general keyword and topics. Because we don't know all of them, that's where we use other programs in order to help us do that and help us write it. But I can write it as a New York Times style, space writer versus me, who I was never a great writer, but
ChatGPT is
looking damn good, So that's where business is so saving time, but also you're still an expert,
That's so wild. Oh man. And to even just give an example of how that would work for people listening who are like, what the hell is SEO? Because book kids, and we always talk about, Southwestern and how this relates from Southwestern to the real world. But like we get taught how to sell, we get taught how to communicate with people, and all that stuff is really valuable. But when it comes to the technical stuff, like you mentioned it earlier, we were talking about SEO when you discovered, customer interface, UX, all that stuff when you learn that from a business standpoint, that's really where you set yourself apart, because the competition that's killing it are good at that. So you need to just even arrive at the table of the top in that industry, you have to know at least the basics of that, right? And then that's not something that gets taught.
It's like just adopting the tech, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where, Southwestern, for years, it was like, no, make your maps on your piece of paper, right? Yeah. It's this way. It's always been done.
30 demos.
And then also you got some tech, you got other pieces of software they're pulling in, so you know whose name they are, all this information, right? And I see it now in the tourism industry. It's hilarious, right? Because even up till 5 years ago, no one had online booking for tours, which is hilarious. And so I argue with this guy. I argue with a couple of people about like chatbots, and they're like, oh no, I have personal people that do it. I go, oh, that's amazing. You have 24/7 customer service to help answer people's questions. She's like, I don't have 24/7. How can I even do that? I was like, that's why I have a chatbot. And so then, and I go, she's like, yeah, well, we answer in our people spend tons of time. I go, yeah, our people, they spend 80% less time and get to focus on things that are important, like taking care of customers, than talking to some grandmother about her balloon ride that she wants to go on for 35 minutes.
Yep.
So again, it's understanding technology and then being willing to be an early adopter is what makes you win.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all of that, and I think that people who resist are only. I mean, every day that goes by that you're not learning to adapt to it, you're falling behind. Like, case in point, right now, there's certain things that we need to do at the podcast. We're trying to switch up the website. We're trying to like create this and that. But while we're doing that, and while we're focused on that, uh, in my head, I'm like, I need to learn everything I can about AI, about how to use this, because you got to understand the rules of the game, right? You got to understand the power that can be ChatGPT. It's not about searching for dolphins, right? And I got to understand my industry, right? So new things come out about podcasting, and YouTube's doing this with podcasts, and Spotify's doing this with podcasts. So I got to learn about all of that so I can master my craft, student of the game, right? And at the same time, I'm also trying to master the craft of like the tools available to me as an online company of just trying to expand this, right? Not just to generate more revenue from sponsors or anything like that. It's just more so my product can be premium. Because if you fall behind on that in 4 or 5 years, other podcasters, other YouTubers are going to be doing this. And so that by the time we get to that point, it's like, dude, we're 3 years behind, right? But if you just do that every day, it just changes the trajectory of your business, even no matter what industry you're in, man.
And premium, what you're talking about is huge. This is no matter what it is, whether you're in B2B or you're, selling something or e-commerce or whatever it is, that high quality customer experience of whatever it is that makes you quality is what you need to focus around. Because if you don't have that, nothing else matters, right? Like the only reason that we can charge 30 to 40% more than our competitors for ballooning is because we have a higher end operation, and then we showcase that through the site, and the actual experience is high end, right? Yeah. With B2B, it's accessibility. So it's just if someone can't get in touch to get a question answered or book a meeting with you or get in touch with you right away, you pretty much failed as an experience, because you're giving someone a reason of why not to work with you, right? And you're making it hard, the accessibility, and it's not scalable to just give everyone your cell phone. Right. And so it's how do you have all the technology to make sure if someone wants to book a meeting, they can. But again, you can still qualify them. That's where all this tech comes back together. But there's no way we could charge a 30 to 40% premium if we didn't have all 5 stars pretty much in reviews and push that hard, because you have to have proof behind it to also, ask for pricing.
Especially in a world where everything's so like, it might not seem that like that big of a deal, but for example, like we switched to using this platform when you first recorded with us, we were using Zoom. Zoom recorded at 720, p so when we threw it up on YouTube, it looks so shit, like it was just not good. So we had to upgrade to this. This isn't even 4K. This is recording at 1080, but at least it's like sharper, right? And so when it comes to creating content from a standpoint of professionalism to come off as an expert in your field, optics are so important now in the world that we live in today, that if you can't, I mean, think about it. When you go to a business, a restaurant, and you go best Chinese food in Portland, right? And I go to their website or something like that. You look at the reviews, and that could matter. But if I open their website and it's sharp and it's simple and it's easy to use, I'm probably going to go eat there. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this is great. I don't have to look at reviews. This looks amazing. Because if they care this much about their website, I know they care that much about their food. Now, it could be totally false. I go there and it's the food shit. But from a standpoint of initial eyeballs and grabbing people and getting them to come to knock on your door, it's all the optics matter. And so what you're saying is absolutely correct, because when people go and let's say they go and talk to you and you can't be there for them, at best case scenario, worst case scenario is, like you said, fail. Best case scenario, you're just leaving a shit ton of money on the table. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I know I am. I wanted to give a quick shout out to the people that make this show possible, the people that bring this show to you. These are people who all sold books, and we're here to give a quick shout out to them in a spotlight about their company and what they're up to. So if you're interested, or if after listening to this you're kind of wanting to know a little bit more, feel free to click on the links below to connect with these people. These are from an excerpt I have with them from a podcast that I do on the side. It's called Executive Exercises, where we take all our sponsors and they come into a think tank and share some awesome ideas about how to grow their business specifically on different topics. Go check that out. But I pulled some of the comments that they had explaining what they do and who they're looking for on their companies. And so if that sounds like you, like I said, click below. Hope you enjoy. That's okay. And actually, and this is good to, I had Nick kind of explain this a little bit too, but it's because I've been in the insurance industry before. For people who are listening, like, how do you make 115% commission?
The way I explain it to people is the insurance companies we represent. So we're a broker. All these companies we work with, they know they're not really going to be making any money off the sales that I make for the first several years. But they don't care about that. They know these clients are going to be on the books for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So they know they're going to make money over the long haul. And so part of the reason agents are able to make so much is there's all these companies out here, and they're all competing for the broker's business, because these companies don't actually have their own in-house sales force. They have independent contractors. And so if their compensation or their commission levels that they offer aren't competitive, I'm not going to place any business with them.
Hello, off schedule moment. Wanted to tell you about Southwestern Real Estate. They're 99% drama free, only 99, not 99.9. So it's a bit spicy, kind of like this episode. Anyway, they will learn you to kick ass at real estate. So make sure you guys click the link below, get in touch with them. Okay, back to work. Bye. That'll do for now. Like I said, make sure you click below to get some more information. And now back to the show. That you could have,
and that's where it comes back to like this whole AI, like chatting on third-party sites and articles.
Yeah,
it's how often are you reading an article and you're like, wow, that sounds really interesting, and you're like, oh, I have this question, and you're like, do I really want to go to the site? Like, or you're like, oh, I'll just look up somewhere else. And then I'll look at reviews, and you find something else you get off on, right? There's very high intent moments, and if you can catch the high intent moment, you're automatically capturing more of those people who you would have never caught. And that's whether it's on your own website, right, of giving accessibility, but it's on those third party. Those are really high intent. Like imagine someone looking at a software of like comparing 3 different softwares, even like a CRM, right? For like Salesforce versus HubSpot versus some other random, one of the other random ones, like Vanilla Swirl or whatever it's called. Fresh, right? Or Pipe.
We use HubSpot, but
But when you go to compare them, if you could chat with someone at that moment on G2 and be like, hey, does it work for this? And how much is this thing? Even if you get into conversation, they can jump into a Zoom, you're probably going to buy from them. Like, because I don't want to waste my time even looking at the others. And so it all comes down to intent. And that's what I can't, it's that I drive constantly with our large clients. Like, it's just intent. Are you capturing the intent? Are you giving access to yourself for high intent people at any moment on your own site or on any other place you talked about?
Yeah. And for people listening who don't know what you're talking about intent, we're talking about when the customer is hot, when the lead, it's kind of like when you sit down with the mom and the bookfield, to put it in bookfield terms, like it's like knocking on the door. The mom's like, hey, I'm into
my
education.
Kid's stuck in school
and my kid sucks at math. And I have a senior that's going to college. Do you have anything for that? And you're like, yeah, you want to, that's what you want to be like. Do you have a place to sit down? That's the same thing, except instead of doing it in person, you're just asking for a place to sit down on that third party website, which is a phenomenal way. Cause like you said, anywhere that you're being talked about, you can be.
And you can still jump into a damn Zoom meeting. Like right there, I could be on Forbes and you could be now chatting on it, jump straight to a Zoom meeting. You didn't fill out a form, but it still like can qualify them to know, like, are they a real company? Are they big enough? Based on who you want to talk to. Right?
Your target market.
It's like talking to old people all day. You still have to qualify, right?
Right. Yeah. Question for you, and then we can move into hot air balloon stuff because I am curious about this. Last bit about AI stuff is who's your ideal target market for your company? Like, because I, for example, probably couldn't afford you because we're a small startup. I mean, that's just okay, right? But if maybe someone's listening and they're like, oh, how do I do that? How do I hire Eliav to do a chatbot for my company?
If you're using Drift, which is the top like chatbot B2B software, and you're on Salesforce, Marketo, whatever, like you're on Drift, we should definitely chat, because basically when we do optimizations, you increase by like 300% in conversations to 500% in conversations. I look at it all goes back to book stuff, right? If you knock on more doors that are qualified, you have a good chance of getting more sit downs, you make more sales. So I don't focus on the sales and the demos. I go, let's get as many people interacting as possible. And most people see like 10 to 20x on their initial investment with their chatbot platform. The second one is for anyone for Helium, is if you already have a chatbot, doesn't matter what company you have it through, and you're doing sponsored content on third-party sites, or you're doing affiliate marketing for e-commerce, it's insane. So because it's still new to market, the opportunities are pretty nutty. So again, so if you have a chatbot and you're doing e-com or whatever, and you're trying to get on, and you want to be able to chat on third-party articles about you, that's when you can get in contact with us for that.
That is sick. Super cool. Super cool, man. Hey, appreciate you sharing those thoughts. Hopefully in 6 years.
You know what's funny, Andres,
all
real quick, though? This is hilarious. You know, in the book field, you always like when you're recruiting, you can't tell people you made like 30, 40 grand last summer, right? Or like however much it was, because people don't believe it. Yeah. It's the same issue I deal with clients. So like I had a client that went from 157 demos to 4,400 the next year, right? All through Drift, right? But just like optimizing their stuff properly. And I can't tell people I give them a 40x because now you're set into that. Like, it's like telling everyone they're going to make like 40 grand their first summer selling books, right? Is there a chance? Sure. But the funny thing is it's like, it happens every time now. So I literally just sort of like, it's so weird having to completely under promise, knowing your results are higher because people just won't believe it. And it's fascinating. And it's really, I found that more and more, like the better you get at whatever your job is, you have to kind of like just undersell what you do because otherwise people like, people get a 2 or 3x, they're stoked about anything. Right. Yeah. And if someone's like, Andres, I can grow your subscribers by 40x. You'd be like, BS.
Yeah. It's
right?
It's like, yeah.
But it's funny when like client after client it happens. It's really funny. So now people just like us a lot.
Hell yeah, dude. That is so badass. We are going to continue to chat even off the air, man. I got to stay in touch with you. You're so close to me. Every time I'm in Seattle, I should come grab a beer with you or something.
You should. Yeah.
That's what we'll do. Next time I actually got to go up in like a week or so to get my car. I'm buying a new car. So
really?
Dude, yeah.
You just stay with us if you want.
Sure.
If you don't have a hotel, our friends stay. Yeah. Hit me up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll hit you up either way. Anyway, okay, so let's talk. I mean, right before we started recording, you started telling me about how you're scaling your business with your hot air ballooning, and I thought this was also fascinating. So, unfortunately, people would have to come to Seattle to see you for this. But hey, any alumni in the Seattle area that are listening, and maybe they can come find you, or even in the Pacific Northwest. But tell me more about you. Kind of mentioned a little bit of the origin story, how Henry Bedford got you started into it. But last time we talked to you, you were doing all sorts of different things, but what have you been up to lately that has been scaling? Tell me what you were saying earlier about
so we started in 2016 and then we're mainly just in Seattle. So I built that up. Now we've got 4 pilots and 25 crew. And then I launched Walla Walla. So another location last year. So now we fly over the vineyards in Walla Walla, which is beautiful. As well as in front of Mount Rainier, which is cool. And so we've got the 2 locations and now we're doing multi-day balloon tours, right? That's the next step, right? You get these local where you're doing daily tours and you're like, man, it'd be really fun to go on adventures. So pretty much I just want to go to adventures and drink really good wine and good food. So I created a multi-day balloon tour where we'll do 1 flight in front of Mount Rainier, 1 flight in Prosser, which is like about 3 hours away. So you get to go over Mount Rainier, check that out, and then go on the other side. And we fly in Prosser, which is like all these vineyards. And then the next day we go to Walla Walla and fly over the vineyards there. And then we basically have wine tours and all kinds of stuff during the day. And it's just like, and then we do aged wine and private chefs and you stay in like high-end Airbnb. So basically it's like a true adventure tour that like doesn't exist. Cause otherwise people just like take you around to like Alaska, like here's 3 places and go on a whale watching tour. We're like, no, this is part of it. So this all comes from this dude named Buddy Bombard. Great name, right? So Buddy Bombard in the 70s and the 80s and early 90s, he created the first multi-day balloon tours and the only one to ever do it until now. And he would do it in Europe and like fly in the Swiss Alps or over the French countryside and meet countesses and stay in chateaus. And like, I mean, it was epic, right? This guy, Buddy Bombard. So anyway, about 3 years ago, I bought a site because he was out. So I was like, yeah, buddybombard.com, right? So anyway, so I was like, well, how hard can it be? And because we have multiple locations anyway, and in between we have our launch sites, we're able to do this now. So we're doing that during this summer and to balloon festivals. And it'll be like 8 to 10 grand, for 4 or 5 days, but it'll be like, we'll drink like 1997 Chateau Rothschild and we'll drink, 12-year-old Caymuses and we'll drink, really epic good bottles of wines from the 80s, like incredible Bordeaux's. And then private chefs. So that sounds pretty fun. And then in the winter, we're going to do it all over the Southwest and start doing like Utah, flying the canyons, Antelope Canyon, that kind of stuff. It'll be pretty neat. So we're trying to go multi-day, really just
amazing.
Fun.
That's amazing.
Along with our still daily flight.
Right. Are you trying to expand this like countrywide, like nationwide?
We will, yeah. So but again, it's being able to do it as a high-end luxury quality, right? So if you look at the other luxury companies in the United States around tours, like Black Tomato, there's a few others, and they basically sell like 6 to 10-day tours that are, you stay in a high-end hotel, right? It's like a $500 a night hotel, or like the Ritz, whatever, $1,000, whatever, for the Ritz Carlton. And then you go on a couple adventures, and they make it perfect, right? They're like your perfect concierge. And they charge anywhere from like, $8,000 to $15,000 for these trips. Ballooning is way the hell more interesting and is like a bucket list type thing. And so it's, so we're going to have a couple places here. We're testing it this year in Washington and Oregon, and doing the different festivals and these 3-4 multi-day tours. And then we're going to do the Southwest, and then we'll start figuring out where else. So in the East Coast during the fall leaves showing, we'll start to expand it nationwide. So we're already building all of the search engine stuff around Google. We're already showing up under like luxury balloon tours. We're already showing I think it was like,
that's sick.
Yeah, like luxury balloon tour. I think we're like number 5 or 6 or something on Google. I don't know. It's been, like 3 weeks that I wrote an article, so we're doing a lot of that, which is really fun. So we're excited to where that's going to go. And that'll be a nationwide eventually, where we can use pilots from all over the place and creating, again, a luxury high-end experience.
That is so bananas, man. So, wow. Golly. So now what we're going to be able to do is say, hey, we're going to do an alumni reunion in Atlanta at some point, or in Denver. And then you can go hot air ballooning with Eliav.
Yeah. So we'll do one day in Boulder. We fly, right? And then the next day we go out to Grand Junction. We fly in Grand Junction. And then the next day we go out to Telluride, and we fly in Telluride. And then we drink high-end wine, stay in a high-end Airbnbs. And there's like 24 of us between the 3 or 4 balloons. And we, invite a sommelier to bring wine flights, the flights of wine for multiple years from an good aged winery, and then private chefs that cook in the Airbnbs, right? So it's really like, it couldn't be easier. And that's why I say technology is so cool, right? Imagine doing this in the fucking 80s and 90s. Do you know how hard that was? Like, let me write a letter to some chateau person, call them, hope something works. I can
send the carrier pigeon
online chef tonight to come to my house, right? Like, I can literally do it all online in about 3 hours and book everything for a whole week if I wanted to right now. But again, you want specialized experiences and tours, right? And that's what we're trying to make sure that they're unique experiences from our relationships with these very specialty winemakers, or experiences you could never get otherwise. It's like ultimate access, to something you could never ever get access to.
That is so cool. Wow. That's awesome, man. Do you ever get scared of like when you're flying up there? Is it dangerous? Is it like,
no,
let's address that objection.
Funny. Balloon, if you look up our hot air balloons dangerous, we're #1 on Google. So you can look that up, but they're not. So they're like super low risk because if you think about, let's say everything would go wrong with a balloon, right? Like there were like a fuel leak or something that's very, very rare, right? Because you check stuff beforehand and there's nothing that's hitting it right while you're flying. So, and let's say you couldn't use your fuel, it turns into a parachute because the bottom's open. It's just a damn parachute. So the fastest you can come down is maybe 1,000 or 1,100 feet a minute, which is slower than a World War II T-10 Army parachute. So if those guys were okay, you'd probably be fine. And then as long as you don't fly in poor weather, you're good. So, don't fly in thunderstorms, that kind of stuff. High wind that, is outside of your range, that based on your area. But otherwise, it's much more dangerous for you to drive to go ballooning than it is to actually fly.
Now that's interesting. Wow. That's sick, man. I want to go up there. I'm going to go up there. I don't know if I can afford a $10,000 weekend getaway, but we'll see what we can do with my wife.
Yeah, but think about it. It's like a bucket list. It's like an ultimate, like maybe it's your 10th anniversary or whatever, right? And you're like, I got to do something awesome. Like nobody wants to like go to dinner. Like, hey, take me to some fancy dinner again for our anniversary. Like, no, like when I did this year, I was like, honey, let's go to Tahiti. And I just bought tickets to Tahiti. And then last minute I was like, it's gonna be raining. And we went to Maui instead, like for a week and ditched our children. That's an anniversary. Like go do something cool. Like don't get flowers, some food, and like a dinner. Like what a, I don't know. You got to do something interesting, do experiences.
Something cool. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a way large enough market. Even if it were like 10 grand for 3-4 days, people would do it.
That's so badass. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I know I am. I wanted to give a quick shout out to the people that make this show possible, the people that bring this show to you. These are people who all sold books, and we're here to give a quick shout out to them in the spotlight about their company and what they're up to. So if you're interested, or if after listening to this, you're kind of wanting to know a little bit more, feel free to click on the links below to connect with these people. These are from an excerpt I have with them from a podcast that I do on the side. It's called Executive Exercises, where we take all our sponsors and they come into a think tank and share some awesome ideas about how to grow their business specifically on different topics. Go check that out. But I pulled some of the comments that they had explaining what they do and who they're looking for on their companies. And so if that sounds like you, like I said, click below. Hope you enjoy. On a note from I'm trying to think, like if I was looking into this, and for people who are listening who might be like, hey, this actually, I want to learn more about this. What's the barrier to entry? Like maybe I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, that sounds cool, but I don't know shit about insurance. Like why would I want to go talk to people?
Yeah, the barriers to entry, I think, are really pretty low. Everybody would probably have a different opinion, but in terms to just be able to get out the door and go sell, you've got to get a license. I have my life and health license because you needed the health license at Family Heritage, or if you want to sell Medicare products or certain types of health products, right, you have to have the health side. But what it takes to get either one or both of those licenses is roughly the same. You take a study course. You may need to study for 15 hours. You may need to study as many as 30 hours. But like with Cardinal, we've got a pretty cool course. From studying to getting your license can be as quick as like 7 to 10 days if you really, 15 to 20 if you're moving at a medium pace. And beyond that, if it takes you longer than that, you're just not really all that motivated to start because it's not a difficult process.
Yo, let's get off schedule one last time. Go watch a movie, or maybe you should figure out how to work at EnLight.Energy. Alex Black is crushing it down there, and a former DSM, Julio Hernandez, are both running this company. And man, they are cranking 10 people on their team and growing. It's enough that Alex only has to sell like one thing every other week and make over 6 figures. So if you want to learn more about that and maybe help change the planet, click on the link below. That'll do for now. Like I said, make sure you click below to get some more information. And now back to the show. Let me ask you about this. From you, it's just to keep it a little bit related to self-publishing, but from your time selling books and building these two like really profitable businesses that you're cranking out. I mean, I'm sure there's still things ventures you're still pursuing, but for these two specifically, what's some of the stuff that you've been able to use, like, or that you go, man, where did I learn this from? I learned this from my time selling books. Is there anything that really sticks out to you?
So it's very, very specific in the way that all three connect. So it all comes down to context and personalization, which is really pre-approach, right? So pre-approach is if I go to a random door, which you all know, like a random door, like what are the chances I'm going to get it? Maybe. If you know their name, does that percentage go up? Yes. Yeah. Great. If you know where the kids go to school, it goes up. So anything you can use in an actual conversation allows you to get in a door better. Well, it works the same with chat, except we get all that stuff beforehand from their IP address. So if you've never been to, let's say, my site before and you come, Andres, I know what state you're in. I know which company you're from because it pulls the IP information. So I already know what company you're from. So I can say like, hey, we're so excited to talk to the Ponytails podcast, right? It's automatic personalization the first time you're there. Now, let's say it's and I can know how many, and then you give your email so that we can chat. Well, now I get 80 data points. I know how many Twitter followers you have. I know all this data on you that I can now use, right? Now, the whole idea is how do you do that without being creepy? Well, how do you get into a door when you have all this information of what time they're going to be home with car? You don't tell them like, hey, I knew you were home because you have a red minivan and you dropped John off at baseball at 3 o'clock. Don't fucking scare people. Well, how do you think it works with chatbots? Same damn way, right? So it's using context. So when someone is in private school, you don't say like, we're only talking to the kids in private school. You say, I'm talking with the advanced students in school. And then you bring it to private school, right? Because it's context. So the same thing in using personalization and context is how do you not be creepy but get the context where they want to chat with you, right? That's what chatbots, right? Then where it goes back to ballooning is really interesting. When I land on a property, Sometimes I do not know who they are. Right? It's a random person.
And we should explain this. When you're balloons aren't like aircraft where you can specifically pick where you're landing, right? Or
you can and you can't, right? So like you can control a balloon. If you look up how to steer a balloon, we're also number 1 on Google for that, right? Because again, SEO matters, right? You have to think about this. When you think about SEO, you think about what are all of the different silos that it's about. So one for me is about balloon history. Another one is about how do balloons work. Another one is how do you get into ballooning, right? To become a pilot. You got all these, or just about Seattle, about Walla Walla, about luxury tours, multi-day, right? You've all these things you build content underneath it, right? So you get all this traffic and then it makes anything local, you get better stuff because of it. Okay. So that's why I do that. So when you think about steering a balloon, you use the winds at different altitudes. So let's talk about the China balloon, right? This week. Well, they said, oh, it's unsteerable. Total bullshit. It's completely steerable based on the jet stream. So if you come down to 15, 20,000 feet, the wind's going this way. Up at 60,000 feet, it's real slow. So they do is they drop the balloon down, got in the jet stream, and came across Montana. So Google Loon was able to get very close to completely controlling balloons. You're flying a hot air balloon, we only have an hour. So the wind might be going this way on the surface and this way at 3,000 feet and this way at 6,000 feet. And so you just move into the different ones, but you don't always, about say 80% of the time I can get where I want to based on where I start.
Gotcha.
But
okay, so I just clarified.
You don't know.
Okay, okay, so then that's to explain that to where you're about to say, because sometimes you land in a person's like back.
So let's say you land in someone's random field. Well, and they're pissed, right? So like I land in a field and there's literally like there's cows around and whatever, horses, and some dude's like huffing and puffing on his 4-wheeler, right?
Seen it before.
Well, what do you do when a dude's mad at the door selling books? Right? They come and they're all pissed and they're like, what do you want? Well, if you go back to Dustin Hillis's book where he talks about buying styles, it's a fighter. So what do you do with fighters? You're very direct and to the point. So you're not like, oh, I'm so sorry trying to build a relationship. You go, hey, are you John? Right? Like, because I know their name. There's an app. It's called Onyx Maps. You can look it up, figure out who all your neighbors are. It's genius, right? So I use it to know his property. So I go, hey, are you John? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, great. Man, I've always wanted to meet you. You have such a beautiful property, but I was trying to actually land over at the Swansons where I've landed before, and also over at Mark. And I don't know if you know Sarah and Carol, and on the other side over there, the Billsworths that we land over a lot. But man, I just want to come over and meet you. And they're like, I just hope it would be okay if we take the balloon down here. I'm so sorry about the cows, but should I turn the burner off so I don't scare them anymore? So again, depending on how they are, you're using names to create context, right? It's super easy. And then at that point, they're like, oh, I'm glad you're safe. Right? Like, and then they become friends with you and they're like, anytime you want to land there. So you literally, that fact to be able to turn people around. So that skill set from knocking on doors and turning someone around who's pissed, who doesn't want to talk to you, gives you a bunch of objections, and you turn them around. That skill set is the best possible skill set I think I got out of Southwestern.
Bam. That's cool.
And that's how I use in ballooning. And I also knock on doors to find places to launch and land. And I'll go, hi, are you Sarah? Great. My name's Eliav. You probably see my balloons around. I'm one of the hot air balloonists that fly out here. They go, yeah. I go, yeah, the reason I was stopping by is we have a bunch of places that we launch and land at, and we don't have some place here in the northeast of the city here. And we were hoping that you might be open to maybe letting us launch a balloon from here sometime. It's literally just an approach. And then they're either like, well, I don't know, or maybe. And I was like, well, do you mind showing me back here? Right? Like, it's just, yeah, we can do it here. And hey, we'll text you beforehand. And hey, have you ever been up in a balloon? It's the same thing, but it's building those relationships. But I couldn't have done that probably without my knowledge around selling books. And that's why I have so many launch spots. And, and then you have to continue to build a relationship and not fuck them up. Right. But,
right.
Don't break fences and scare cows and horses. Essentially.
Simple.
Just super. Man. Again, even when you do. Even when I've flown real over horses coming into land, this lady who I know, and she's pissed and she knows me. It's still, I just go, hey, Sarah, I'm going to take care of the customers right now, but I promise I will stop by in 20 minutes when I'm done. I will come over and I will talk to you. but right now this is not the time and the place. And it's calming them down and letting them know when you'll be there. And I go back and I just listen to them and then eventually explained. And they, in the end, they're not like we're friends, right? But they understand why I had to for safety. It's like, what was it called at the end, Andres, where you crewing.
Crew them.
So I basically crew people. I calm them down. I explain the situation and I work out a way, right? Like I don't re-demo them, but I re-demo them because I explain how balloons work. It's literally crewing people. And who knows what happened, and it's always like someone who like has like abused horses they're taking care of that are like scared their horse. I'm like, oh God, but again, but again, and I even know I'm doing it. It's like knock on a door that the dad was pissed and you're like going back or something, and sometimes you just have to, you don't have a choice because it's a safety issue,
Yeah. Wow. That's a really cool way of using that skill that we all learn with selling books. And most people don't learn those skills. Those are like the little nuggets. And you're just like, no, you can't get that anywhere else.
Well, you can get it taught, but it's really hard. My other pilots would do, it's like when we land in this neighborhood that's like, new gated community. And we used to land there for like 30 years. People used to land there. And there were some people were getting a little frustrated and like, I'll go and I'll talk to anyone. I just don't care because I'm like, well, calm down and we have a right to be here. We're doing things legally, but if you understand the legalities, which comes up with a really funny story to actually talk about from the bookfield. But how like back in the day, it'd be like, oh, if you don't get a permit, like, just show them your interstate commerce clause, like whatever BS. Which with the FAA, I can say like it's an intermittent landing, right? Because there's a precautionary landing to make sure we could have flown on, but we needed to land here, which makes it legal, right? As an emergency landing. Yeah, maybe not hold up in a court of law, but like you can get away with it, right? So it's like showing someone the interstate commerce clause, but it's from the FAA, right? So there was this kid named Vlad. This was in Connecticut in like maybe 06. Maybe 06, 2006. And I had all these kids from Yukon and we were all out in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. And this kid, Vlad, has the vocabulary that like more than ChatGPT, right? Like his vocabulary is insane, right? He like writes a school newspaper. The dude's like this, I think he's from Ukraine or Russia or something like originally. And he just had a little bit of an accent, but so smart, right? Like wicked smart. And he ends up he's working in this black, lower end community up like northwestern of Pittsburgh. And he's like, Eliav, known as checks and all this stuff. And I was like, dude, I'll follow you one day. And I followed him. I was like, yeah, it's okay though. You'll be fine. We made some sales. Yeah. So the next day I get this call from a bailiff person, like who's ever like the bail bondsman dude. He's like, hey, I have Vlad here. And I was like, oh man, what does Vlad do? Right. And so he says, yeah, well, your friend, he got an altercation. He's got some charges against him for soliciting, disorderly conduct, a bunch of stuff. And this is like a Friday, right? Like, he's like Friday evening at like, I'd had my phone on for some reason. And it was like, I don't know, like 8 or something. And that's when I got this call. And I go, well, I'll come over, like I'll bring some cash, right? How much do you think the bond is going to be?
10 grand. I don't know.
10 grand. Exactly. I was like, 10 grand. I was like, what did the dude do? Right. So he's like, well, he's like, here's what happened. So basically he didn't have a solicitor's permit. Someone calls the cops on him. Police show up, small podunk town. Sheriff goes, he goes, no, look, it's the interstate commerce clause. And with his high vocabulary, so he's talking to these like podunk guys, right? And they give him a trespassing, soliciting, disorderly conduct, whatever gets a police officer. So I'm just like, oh shit, this is like a big deal. Like I can't handle this. So I call Chris Fugman at the time, my sales manager. And then he's like, you need to talk to Dan Moore. So then I talked to Dan Moore and Dan Moore's like, we'll get this solved. Connects to the lawyer. And then literally, this is a Friday. He was stuck in there all weekend, right? So Monday morning. So Monday morning rolls around. They go to court, get all the charges dropped, get him out, right? Anyway, I get his Sunday letter. You know, I don't know if you did that, but you used to like
we
write
used to.
to
I don't know if they still do that, but we still did that my first or second summer for sure.
Yeah, like you write about your week. So he goes, well, you know, I've been trying to get my 30 demos in, but you know, there's only one other dude in the cell with me, and I've told him a lot about it. But he said he's going to buy it when he gets out of jail. You know, but I didn't get all my demos in, so I'm not so proud of my week. I think it was a hilarious letter. Like, he was still pretty funny and whatever else, but he was really trying hard. This poor guy in prison, you know, in jail with him, was like getting demoed to death, you know, and a new person coming to be like, hey, let me tell you all these educational books, you know. He obviously did not last the summer. He went after that. But, you know, that was Vlad. It was hilarious.
$10,000.
And then my second favorite story was a guy, I won't say his name because if he ever comes on the show, he can say his name, but
we'll call him Mort.
We'll call him what?
Mort is who we use for
Mort,
pseudonym for something.
So Mort's, this is like our first week in Pennsylvania also, right? And he's living with me, and I come home like 9:45 because it's my territory. I get home and Grace, and Mort's is sitting there. And Mort's I was like, dude, what are you home? He goes, oh man. He's like, it was a really rough day. And I was like, what happened? He goes, well, like I kind of partially got arrested, but I had to go get money. I was like, what happened? He goes, well, you know, I'm like running house to house. I'm trying to jam, you know, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I really had to go to the bathroom.
No.
And he's like, it was bad. And I wasn't near anywhere. So like, I just like popped a squat by this tree because no one would let me in. And he goes, I left my book bag there and went to the, you know, mile down to go clean myself off at the gas station. I get a call at the gas station. I get out saying, you know, hey, is this Moritz? And he goes, it's like, yeah, they're like, this is the Pennsylvania Police Department, blah, blah, blah. Like, stay where you are. So anyway, they give him a ticket, and the ticket is for defecating on the plaintiff's property. And on the bottom of the ticket, I read it literally says, note, most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And that's what the officer was on $300. He had to go get $300 out of $400, whatever it was. And he was like, amazing enough, he stayed the whole summer. His dad sold books for a bunch of years originally, and he ended up selling for multiple summers, and we're still good friends, and he's a stud. But like,
we need to get Mort on the show. We need to get him on the show to tell us his story, because I want to hear the most disgusting thing.
You know who you actually need? You need Greg Moody. Greg Moody, and you need Nick Roy. Have you had Nick Roy?
No, somebody else said.
So Nicholas Roy, these are all guys I worked with from UConn. Nicholas Roy right now is one of the most famous magicians in the world. He just spent last month in South America with an Indian psychedelic tribe doing all kinds of, you know, healing ceremonies.
Ayahuasca
stuff.
And shit. Yeah.
Oh, and he is a wild man. And we used to do like magic together in the bookfield. Like we lived together, Nick and I, like having so much fun. And Nick is fantastic. I'll get you Nick Roy's number. And then Greg Moody was just an absolute stud from UConn, who I was drunk recruiting at my sister's graduation, and recruited him the week before the summer, you know, as he was drunk that night, and had him sign a DA, and he came out and sold for like $2. And it's very successful, really cool dude. But like,
I just found Nick Roy. He's in Chicago. I was looking it up while you're.
Oh, Nick Roy is he has custom suit company, and he's a magician, and then does like there's like the Magic Castle in California. He's the Magic Penthouse right in Chicago. I mean, the dude is a riot, and his like mom won the lottery at some point. Like he's a poker player. Like he's a cool dude.
We got to get Nick Roy on the show. Like, that'd be great.
Yeah. And then there's another guy in Portland that you need to know is Lucas Salazar, who only sold one summer, but one of the funniest dudes I've ever met.
Yeah. We got to get him on here.
Hilarious. I mean, he's in Portland. You should hang out with him. He's super fun.
Yeah. I would love to. After we get off air, we should like, there's like a way you can refer these guys so we can get a hold of them. That'd be great. One thing I wanted to ask you about, and then we can close up, is how your involvement with Andrew Yang and how we even came about to have that connection. Because I wanted to ask, maybe there's someone listening who wants to get involved with politics or something like that, and maybe how you found that journey in. And then usually, since we've already done ponytails and you told us a couple stories, it could be like, you know, some more important lessons that you learned or something like that. We can close it up with something really like valuable for our listeners at that point.
Close.
Sure. Maybe we can have them cry or something.
Can I just do my favorite emotional close that I used? It was so awkward. My first summer worked really well. My 8th summer, I was like, wow, this is embarrassing that I'm still trying to emotionally close these people. Okay.
Sure. We can do that.
So I forgot the first thing that you were going to
Oh,
ask.
and then Andrew, I like involvement with Andrew Yang, how you got involved with the politics.
So Andrew Yang was actually because of Brian Toleby. So Brian Toleby, when Andrew was running for, president, he was an early supporter of him. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I wasn't necessarily like back then, like, man, I'm like so pro Andrew Yang, but there were some things that he was doing that I thought were cool. Anyway, after that, he basically, I met him in Necker Island when I went with Brian. They put together this whole AI retreat for all the top AI folks in the world that I had the opportunity to go to. And Andrew was there speaking. And what he talked about was how wild it is that, like, it's kind of like in tech, right? If, let's say, nobody likes AT&T and no one likes Verizon, and a new company like Virgin Mobile comes aboard and 70% of people hate those two companies, it's ripe for disruption, right? That's what Branson talks about a lot. Like, things are ripe for disruption. Politics is ripe for disruption because no one wants Trump and no one wants Biden, right? They both suck, right? Whatever you care about, no one wants either of them, right? I think we can all agree, like 80% of the country doesn't want either of those people. So
at the very least, they hate the bipartisan.
Yeah, that bipartisan. So it's ripe for disruption, right? So what Andrew said, he goes, there's two different ways we're doing this. He goes, after I didn't become president, he goes, I was watching an SNL skit, and the SNL skit was like lobbying for something ridiculous. And he goes, can I just lobby for ridiculous things that are important to people? And so one of that was, was being able to change the way our voting system works, right? Which allows, which they changed in Alaska, which is basically ranked choice voting that allows, you pick your first choice and your second choice. So the first person doesn't get 51%, then, or 60%, whatever it is, then it goes to your second choice. So it allows more moderate candidates because you're going to put your top and your bottom opposite. So sometimes it'll help those middle candidates really win. And that's why Palin lost, which is pretty interesting in Alaska.
Super interesting.
So it gets more moderate, but he's really trying to get people that aren't left, they aren't right. They're just like in the middle, like they're independent people. And I think we can all go to now that all I care about in voting for someone at this point is, can they learn something and make a new decision? I actually don't give a shit about any of their other politics. I just want to know if you learn something new. Can, based off that information, you make a new decision and not just follow your party? And that's why we need independent people. So that's what he's really focused on, is getting more independent that allows the country to move forward. And so when we were in Necker Island, I was like, dude, we'd love to have you come out to Portland. And my friend Stuart and I helped put this thing together. We brought some amazing, amazing people together there and in Seattle, and had Yang come out. And it was, I think there's the Forward Party is really fascinating. And I asked Yang, who's part of this whole thing? And he goes, actually, it's mostly moderate Republicans. And everyone who was sitting there was a moderate Democrat. We're like, that's funny. It's like everybody, because everyone's really in the middle. And, and he's just he just wants people in the middle, which I think is important to this country. So that's kind of where I think it's a cool thing. And I hope that, that the country continues to get more bipartisan in that way. And I think that that'll help everybody, ultimately, if we have more moderate instead of extremes.
That was a cool evening. Stuart is great, by the way. I met him too, and I met a lot of different folks that evening that were really, really cool, doing all sorts of different cool stuff. And it was such an interesting evening. I felt really inspired by a lot of the different people doing so many different cool things that we got to hang out. Because there was like that evening cocktail hour thing, and then we went to like a separate, more intimate thing, and then we just kind of kept peeling off.
Yeah, we drank like the largest bottle of wine I've ever seen. It was like a 6-liter bottle of like 1980s wine or something that we were opening. I was like, I guess we'll open that. There
was that kid there who was like a hacker kid who was
super young. I also met him in Necker Island. I mean, this kid is he's the
brilliant.
top blockchain security person in the world, and he's 20, and worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, he's incredibly hacked Apple when he was like 16, a year after getting it. I mean, the dude's absolutely amazing. The most highest EQ I've ever met in anybody,
Yeah. I have to shoot him a text because we exchanged information, and he was like, we could just hang out and talk about some this stuff is always interesting to me. The kid's so interesting.
He is, he's also we were hanging out in, where were we, in LA, I think, after that, a bunch of us. And he just sat down on a piano and started playing jazz. And I was like, how long have you been playing for? He's like, I don't know, 6 months. And he's like, it's just like an algorithm.
He seems like that kind of person.
Geniuses, But
he seems like a
anyway.
genius for sure.
Yeah, but that's I mean, it was a really interesting group. I mean, there's some it's, you know, there was a couple billionaire people. There were some very, very interesting people that were there. And,
yeah,
you know, it's,
just phenomenal.
I think that it's, people are wanting changes, you know, in this country. And, you know, it's, I always want to change the Southwestern. I didn't want to be like a Christian book cult, and that didn't change. But, you know, you can't make changes everywhere.
one step at a time. That's true.
Although if you take all the Jews typically did better than most of I'm just kidding. But if you take like Dimitri and me and a couple Jews, like we all did pretty well. So I never saw a Jew that didn't do well selling books.
There you go. That's a niche that maybe the Southwestern needs to focus on.
You know, my favorite competition selling books was seeing if I could sell more Bibles than Todd. What was his name? Todd Prevost. Todd Prevost is out as Fred Prevost, who's along with the company. And 1 week I beat him and sold more Bibles than he did, because I just thought it was hilarious to have like the Jewish kids sell Bibles. Because, you know, the Family Bible Library, they'd say like, Jesus, who was he? And I was like, who was he? I really don't know who these people are. And they were like,
he was the greatest of all time Jew. So
pretty much.
Christians,
and that's how I sell it. Like, I'm
time.
Jewish selling Bibles. They'd sell it by these Family Bible Libraries from the 70s. I just wanted to beat Todd because I thought it was hilarious. So anyway,
according to Christians,
I'll finish it off with just a couple, like my favorite emotional close from selling books.
Yes,
because that's more
everybody who's taking notes, write that down.
A couple things I learned. Ready? This is it, which is when she says, "Oh, we just don't have the money."
Oh boy.
Oh man, yeah, I know. I know how you feel. You know, I was talking to this mom, Janice, you know, last week, and you know, Janice, she was saying that there's really, you know, only two things that you can give your kids that, you know, no one can ever take away. You know, one of those things is their education, and the other one is their belief in God. It's what some moms are doing this summer is they're getting the trampoline or going to Disney World or, you know, getting some squirt guns with the kids, and other moms, they're doing the education thing. Which one were you guys thinking about doing? That was my entire first summer. I emotionally closed everyone with that close.
Dropping guilts on the moms.
But, you know, it's like I was in Bible, so, you know, whatever. It was great, you know.
It worked. I mean, listen, man, you know, when I think back to my like second summer in time selling books, and you're just like, you know what, honestly, whatever it is, as long as it's, I mean, because that's not unethical to say. That's solid. That's a good point that you're making. It's just a funny point.
Here's how you do it and play. I think Fred Prevost told me that. He was like,
if it works, it fucking works, man.
Eliav, do emotional close. Here's your emotional close, Eliav. You know, I love Fred.
That's so good. Yeah, we need to get Fred on the show.
You do need to get Fred and Chris Fugman if you haven't too. Chris is
no, not yet. Yeah, these are all people who are like, you know, everybody's a welcome. So, oh man, that's awesome. Well, I think this is a good stopping point for this one, Eliav. This has been a blast. Thank you so much for coming on. And I would like to invite you to anybody listening, by the way, to our Bizler trip that's coming up in Jamaica in October. If you guys got nothing going on, it's an alumni reunion that we're doing. There's our second one. We did one last year in Cancun. We had like 18 people come out. We're trying to make it bigger this year, and it's been a blast so far. A lot of people. Lee McCroskey signed up. Pat Roach has come in. We got a couple others that have signed up. So yeah, so it's gonna be a blast if you guys want to come join us. If you want more information on that, there's a link below. You guys can click on and check it out. Eliav, thank you so much, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, awesome chatting with you.
Oh man, all right. Well, guys, thank you so much. We're approaching 200. This was episode 195. 5 away. We're gonna have a special episode for our 200th, so hopefully you guys enjoy that one as well.
We're bringing back Mort Utley via AI. Mort Utley via AI. Just type in with ChatGPT all of his answers, and it'll just be Mort for number 200. We could probably actually do that with the tech we have now.
With all this manure, there's going to be a ponytail somewhere, and just have to say that. Yes, that'd be so funny. Oh man, I appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys later. See you, everyone.